Washington does drop the hammer on Chinese robots, and the headlines make it sound like the end of the road for Chinese tech dominance. But is this a brick wall or just a temporary speed bump? Today we're going to be going beyond the headlines. We're doing a deep dive into why the US strategy from the chip war to the magnet trap is actually failing to stop China. If you think a ban can stop a 117 billion revolution, you're missing the bigger picture. Let's break down why Washington is terrified and why their plan is already backfiring. Let's start with the big one, the July 28, 2026 FCC ban. The official reason? National security. They claim these robots are backdoors for spying. But let's be real, this is protectionism 101. The US isn't worried about the robot's cameras. They're worried about its price tag. When a Chinese Unitree G1 just costs $16,000 and is ready to ship, while the Americans' competition like Tesla Optimus is still a prototype costing upwards of $100,000 for early adopters. Washington has to do something to protect Silicon Valley. This ban isn't a wall, it's a safe space for American companies that can't compete on price or scale. It slows down the invasion of Chinese hardware into the US. But it doesn't stop the tech from advancing everywhere else in the world. Washington's most aggressive move is the chip war, denying China the high end NVIDIA chips needed to train AI. Here's what the media won't tell you though: you don't need the world's fastest chips to build the world's smartest AI. Chinese labs are mastering aggregated computing and they're stitching together thousands of domestic chips to achieve high end level performance. It's less efficient, yes. It takes a bit longer and uses more power, but it works. By mid 2026, China has managed to maintain about 12% of the world's AI relevant compute. Despite the sanctions, the chip war is a speed bump that is actually forcing China to build a superior independent semiconductor industry. The US thinks that by freezing their domestic market, they can starve Chinese robot makers of cash. This is a massive miscalculation. As of mid 2026, China is currently manufacturing an estimated 85% of the world's humanoid robots. The US is just one room in a very large house. While Washington builds a wall around its own yard, Chinese firms are already dominating Europe, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. They're achieving mass commercialization at the speed that the US cannot touch, with new factories in Guangdong claiming that they can build one humanoid every 30 minutes. Losing the US consumer is a minor revenue dip, but not a death blow. Washington is trying to police hardware, but they've forgotten about the software. This is the open source loophole. China has achieved global adoption by dominating open source AI models that can be freely downloaded and modified worldwide. You can't build a wall around a download link. Even if you ban the physical robot, the AI brain that runs it is already decentralized. Washington is trying to catch the wind in a net. By the time they regulate one version of the software, a thousand clones have already been modified by developers in Brazil, India, and Germany. So, this is the part that should keep Washington up at night: the magnet trap. Decoupling sounds great in speech, but it's a nightmare in the factory. China controls roughly 90% of the processing of rare earth permanent magnets, the very components that allow humanoid robots to move. One estimate found that building robots like the Tesla Optimus without Chinese components would virtually be impossible at scale. If the US tries to build a brick wall against China, they're literally locking themselves in a room with no parts. Any attempt to fully decouple will leave US factories paralyzed while China continues to dominate the global supply chain. Here's the bottom line: every sanction, every ban, and every speed bump is actually incentivizing Beijing to become 100% self sufficient. Washington is effectively paying for Chinese R&D by forcing them to build their own independent supply chains. By the time the US realizes that their brick wall is full of holes, China will have tech ecosystems that are completely immune to Western pressure. The US is buying time, but they're using that time to make their opponent stronger. So, can the US stop China? The answer is definitely no. They can slow them down, they can fragment the market, they can cause temporary headaches. But the structural advantages, the 85% market share, the supply chain dominance, and the sheer speed of commercialization are simply too great to be stopped by a few FCC rulings. US sanctions are a speed bump, not a brick wall. And as any driver knows, once you're over the bump, you just keep going, probably faster than before. Anyways, what do you guys think? Is Washington's strategy a visionary move or a desperate act of declining power? Let me know in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more data driven takes like this. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.